What's at stake for Florida against Texas A&M this Saturday? Maybe more importantly, what's at stake for Billy Napier this Saturday? Now, if you have been tuned into this show during this week, you know that I think this season is still about winning. Like, I know that the DJ Lagway train is off and rolling, and, like, I'm excited about that. I think DJ Lagway is going to be extremely special throughout his college career. Again, though, I think the sixth-year guy, Graham Mertz, probably gives you the best chance to win football games. Clearly, Billy Napier felt that way when he made him the starter, when he got to Gainesville and kept him the starter over the spring and the fall. Like, it's pretty straightforward here. However, and that's not me knocking DJ Lagway, just so we're on the same page. I think he's going to have a tremendous, tremendous career. However, this year is still about winning football games. And I think against Texas A&M, it is hard to overstate the impact of the result of this game. Maybe more importantly, the optics of this game. Florida Gator fans, make sure you're locked in right here to the On3 YouTube channel. College football, nothing but college football all year long. We appreciate y'all in advance for being subscribed. There was a lot of talk going into this season around the win total that Florida had to get to. Like I said on this show, I think 7, your job is safe if you're Billy Napier. I think if it's 6, probably has to be the right 6, probably has to be the right looking 6. I think the right looking 6 would be a win over Texas A&M any way you can get it. All right? Now, I picked Florida in this football game over Texas A&M. Picked them to win, picked them to respond in a big way at home, picked them to play for Billy Napier. But let's just be honest right now. The loss to Miami, and not just that they lost, not just that it was at home, it was the way in which they lost that made the conversation around Billy Napier's job and the optics for Florida very, very vulnerable. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that if he loses this game and Texas A&M walks it off on a 3-point field goal, he's fired. I'm not saying that. But I do say that the way they looked against Miami, if they repeat that against A&M at the crib, where they look undisciplined, they don't, quite frankly, look like they are matching the physicality or the intensity of the opponent. If they look like they're misaligned, they look like they don't have answers. Like, if we see that version of Florida meet Texas A&M and they just look overwhelmed, I get worried. Now, I'm not calling for his job. I'm not saying this is the end-all be-all, but I am saying if that happens again, I get worried. Because if I'm Florida, or just in life, the last thing that you want to be is the last person to know, right? Like, if they look that way against A&M, I think the college football public, all of us, we kind of know where this thing is headed, right? To look overwhelmed by a first-year Mike Elko at Texas A&M at home doesn't get easier. You got Tennessee still. You got Georgia still. You got Texas still. This is supposed to be the workable part of it. This is supposed to be like the part of the schedule where you find some wins and get some momentum, some belief. And so if you just get your stuff rocked at the crib again, I think we kind of know. I think we kind of have a gauge for this, okay? So I'm not saying they should fire him, but I am saying, like, that's some information now that I think would be very difficult to deal with. And I also think if you're Florida, you would much rather be proactive than reactive, right? Like, you would much rather make a move or make some kind of decision to help your football team throughout the rest of your season than just sit there and say, wait for it. Hey, it's about to get better. And then you're like, hey, man, everybody's seeing what's happening right now. Everybody has eyeballs. Everybody just watched Texas A&M whoop Florida. If that's the case, you're like, hey, let's have a discussion about where this thing is really headed. Now, I will also like to see this. I don't know what's going on within that building. I don't have the insight to all those conversations that Billy Napier is having with the powers that be at Florida and the expectations and all those things. I do know that Florida, with that brand and what that team has, what that program has been historically, they expect great things. Maybe not this season, and that in itself is kind of a conversation to have, but like they expect to compete for conference titles. They expect to compete for national titles. Right now, it's not where you're at. Is it going somewhere? And if you look overwhelmed against A&M, it's hard for me to confidently say this is going somewhere. If it was year 1, different story. It's year 3. I know it's the SEC. I know they did not walk into a furnished apartment. Like, this thing had some holes in it. They had to, I think, fight a little bit to get back to neutral. But if you can't do it by the 3rd year against a team like Texas A&M in their first year, say what you want about the roster, I just think that's something to be discussed. Now, as much as we talk about like the doom and gloom and all the bad things that could happen, like let's have this conversation too. If Florida responds the way that I am predicting they respond, and Florida comes out swinging. They beat the brakes off Texas A&M. One, you look back at that Miami game and say, whoa, okay, how good is Miami? That's first off. Second, I think you look at the rest of your schedule, you say, okay, hey, we're not, too far off track here. Like, we got to win the games we're supposed to win here. We got to beat Mississippi State, got to beat UCF. But again, confidence, momentum, belief internally, like that's what I would really be excited about capturing if you can beat A&M. And let's just be real here, A&M did not look like a juggernaut when they played Notre Dame. And I'm not really big into the transitive property because I think college football and the volatility of it and the fact that you got 18 to 22-year-olds playing the sport is what makes it so beautiful and so fun because anything can happen. But I do think that Notre Dame loss hasn't exactly aged well. Shouts to NIU. This is a massive game. Massive, massive game. Optically, I think when it comes to how Florida plays overall, that has to be the thing we look at in this game. All I want to see is Florida look like the team we expected them to look like going into this season. And that expectation was not based in like, hey, like all this rah-rah hype, hype video stuff. Like this expectation was based off of how they finished last year, fighting tooth and nail in a lot of games against good football teams. Like Graham Mertz stays healthy, they beat Missouri. I don't think that's a stretch. If Graham Mertz is healthy, Florida State and all the injuries they had, maybe Florida finds a way to win that game. Like I'm not basing this in just like, I hope Florida's able to win games for Billy Napier's job. I'm basing this in what we saw at the end of last season. And by using some logic, you would hope would impact the locker room and impact the roster in a positive way with the entire world telling you what you can't do. So, again, I'm not calling for his job. I would love to see I predicted Billy Napier to finish out the season at Florida, have success, make a bowl game. But let's be clear here. If they look the way they looked against Miami, against Texas A&M, there will be some uncomfortable vibes in Gainesville. And we'll have more uncomfortable conversations here going forward on this very show about Florida. So just making sure we're on the same page there. Again, I am a fan of Billy Napier. I'm a fan of the way that he operates. I'm a fan of the way that he's just done his best to shut out that noise. But just making sure we have a very real conversation about what hangs in the balance Saturday in Gainesville against Texas A&M. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.